A 12-year-old boy secretly brings a sandwich every day to a lonely old woman in a nursing home, and oh, one knows that, and oh, cameras, and oh, reward. Then one morning, she disappears. Before he can even understand what happened, a U.S. senator walks in, looks straight at the boy, and calls him by name. What she reveals next changes his life forever. Marcus had mastered the art of not being seen at 12 years old. He knew which hallways echoed, which floors creaked, and exactly how long he could hold his breath inside the narrow supply closet before fear started knocking on his ribs. Every afternoon after school, while his father pushed a mop through the quiet halls of the nursing home, Marcus stayed hidden, wedged between boxes of gloves and disinfectant, knees pulled to his chest. His father had rules, simple ones, important ones. Stay invisible, that don't cause trouble, that don't talk to residents. Rules weren't suggestions when you live paycheck to paycheck. Rules were survival. Marcus followed them all, that he didn't touch anything, didn't wander, didn't speak unless spoken to, until the day he noticed her. Room 317 always felt colder than the others. The door stayed slightly open, like it was tired of closing. Inside lived Mrs. Dorothy Castellano, thin as folded paper, silver hair tangled in defiance, eyes sharp enough to cut through anyone who tried to smile at her. The nurses whispered about her. She's difficult. She refuses help. She doesn't eat. Marcus saw it every day that a tray would arrive. The door would close, and hours later, the tray would leave untouched. One asked why. Marcus wasn't supposed to look, but he did. Through the crack of the door, he saw her sitting upright in bed, hands clenched around the blanket, staring at the wall like it had betrayed her. Not sleeping, not resting, waiting he didn't know what for. Hunger was a language Marcus understood. It sounded like the ache he felt when dinner was late, like the quiet shame of pretending you weren't starving. Mrs. Castellano didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't call for help. She just endured. That night, Marcus reached in his backpack and felt the sandwich his father had packed that morning. Peanut butter, 2 slices of bread, slightly squished. He wasn't supposed to leave the closet, wasn't supposed to break the rules, that wasn't supposed to care, but some kinds of hunger are impossible to ignore, and Marcus felt this one in his bones. Marcus stood outside room 317 longer than he meant to. His fingers tightened around the paper-wrapped sandwich in his hand. Half of it, really. He'd eaten the other half slowly during math class, saving this portion without fully admitting why. Peanut butter again. Always peanut butter. Cheap. Filling. Reliable. Just like the rules. Stay invisible. Don't cause trouble. Don't talk to residents. His heart thudded against his ribs, as if it knew what he was about to do before he did. The door was ajar, just like always. Mrs. Dorothy Castellano sat in her bed, staring at the wall. Not the television. Not the window. The wall. Her lunch tray rested untouched on the side table, the lid still sealed, the food inside growing cold and unwanted. Marcus didn't step inside. He barely breathed. He slid the sandwich onto the corner of the table, next to the tray, and backed away like it might explode. Then he ran. He didn't sleep well that night. The next afternoon, Marcus passed room 317 with his father trailing behind him, mop bucket squeaking softly. Marcus forced himself not to look, but he did. The sandwich was gone. The tray was still there. Closed. Untouched. But the sandwich, his sandwich, was gone. A strange warmth crept in his chest, followed immediately by fear. What if someone saw? What if she complained? What if his father got fired? Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon in the supply closet, knees bouncing, ears ringing with imagined consequences. But nothing happened. No shouting. No accusations. No stern lectures from his father. Just silence. The next day, Marcus brought another sandwich. This time, he waited. Mrs. Castellano's eyes shifted toward him the moment he stepped inside the room. Sharp. Alert. Suspicious. You lost? She snapped. Marcus froze. I'm sorry, he whispered, already backing away. She watched him like a hawk watches a mouse, eyes flicking from his face to the sandwich in his hand. That food on that tray, she said bitterly, tastes like cardboard and regret. You here to watch me starve too? Marcus swallowed. His throat burned. No, ma'am. He placed the sandwich on the table, hands shaking. I thought you might want this." She stared at it as if it were an insult. "Peanut butter?" she scoffed. "What am I, 6?" Marcus nodded once. "I am." For a moment, he thought she might throw it at him. Instead, she grabbed it, tore the paper open, and took a bite. She didn't say thank you. She didn't smile. She chewed slowly, deliberately, like she was daring the sandwich to disappoint her. "Don't make a habit of it," she muttered through a mouthful. Marcus didn't reply. But the next day, he came back, and the next, tea became their secret. Every afternoon, Marcus would slip into room 317 with something small, half a sandwich, an apple, crackers tucked into his pocket. Sometimes the food was crushed, sometimes warm, sometimes all he had was bread. Mrs. Castellano complained every time. "This is stale. You need more jelly. Is this the best you can do?" But she ate. Every bite. She never said thank you. But she also never pushed the food away. Weeks passed. The anger in her eyes softened first. Then her voice. Then her posture. She stopped staring at the wall and started sitting by the window. She let the sunlight touch her face. She asked Marcus questions, short ones at first. "What grade? You like school? Your father strict?" Marcus answered carefully, quietly. She listened. Really listened. One afternoon, she asked him why he always came alone. "My dad's working," Marcus said. "I just wait." She snorted. "Waiting is a waste of a childhood." Marcus shrugged. "It's safer." That earned him a long look. Another day, she asked his name. "Marcus," he said. She rolled it around her mouth like she was tasting it. "Strong name," she said finally. "Means warrior." Marcus blinked. No one had ever called him that. She started telling him things too, about growing up in Brooklyn, about losing her husband too young, about a son who stopped calling years ago. "I wasn't easy," she admitted once, staring at her hands. "Still not." Marcus smiled softly. "I know." She huffed. "Rude little boy." But there was something like affection in her eyes. The nurses noticed the changes before Marcus did. Mrs. Castellano began eating again, really eating. She asked for seconds. She complained less. She even laughed once, a sharp, rusty sound that startled everyone within earshot. But no one noticed Marcus. And that was fine. He preferred it that way. One afternoon, as he stood to leave, Mrs. Castellano reached out and caught his wrist. Her hand was thin, fragile, but firm. "You don't have to hide in that closet anymore," she said quietly. Marcus looked down. "Ido." She studied his face for a long moment. "Well," she said, releasing him, "then at least hide somewhere warm." As Marcus slipped back into the hallway, his heart felt lighter than it had in years that he didn't realize it yet. But that small, quiet kindness, the half sandwich, the stolen minutes, the secret ritual, had already changed everything. Neither of them was invisible anymore, and the world was beginning to notice. The first time Marcus heard his name spoken sharply, he knew something was wrong. "Hey, you boy." He turned slowly, heart sinking. 2 nurses stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, expressions tight. One of them held a clipboard. The other glanced past Marcus, straight at room 317. "How long have you been going in there?" the nurse asked. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "That resident is not family," the second nurse said. "Children aren't allowed unsupervised access. You know that." I was just," Marcus began, then stopped. Lying felt heavier than telling the truth. They didn't yell. That was worse. That be why the time his father was called in the office, Marcus's hands were shaking. His father stood very still while the supervisor spoke. Very still. The way men do when they're holding themselves together with nothing but willpower. "We understand your son didn't mean harm," she said. "But rules are rules. This facility has liability concerns." Marcus watched his father's jaw tighten. "One more incident," the supervisor continued, "and we'll have to reconsider your employment." The words landed like stones. Outside, in the parking lot, Marcus's father finally spoke. "You broke the rules," he said quietly. "I know," Marcus whispered. "I told you why those rules exist." "I know." Silence stretched between them. Finally, his father sighed. A tired sound, worn thin by years of scraping by. "I can't lose this job, Marcus," he said. "I just can't." Marcus nodded, tears burning his eyes. "I promise," he said quickly. I won't go back. I swear. His father looked at him for a long moment, then pulled him into a hug, tight, protective, desperate. I know you got a good heart, he murmured. But sometimes a good heart costs too much. Marcus kept his promise. For 3 days, 3 afternoons spent back in the supply closet, knees pulled to his chest, listening to carts roll past. 3 days of imagining room 317. Empty tray, cold air, Dorothy waiting. The guilt was unbearable on the fourth day. He couldn't take it anymore. He told himself he would just check. Just peek. Just make sure she was okay. He carried a sandwich anyway. Room 317 was darker than usual. The television was off. The curtains were drawn. Dorothy lay slumped against her pillows, her skin pale, her eyes half closed. Mrs. Castellano? Marcus whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. Oh, she rasped. You came back. Relief hit him so hard his knees nearly buckled. I'm sorry, he said, rushing to her side. I wasn't supposed to. I promised rules, she croaked. Always rules. He placed the sandwich in her hands. She tried to lift it. Her fingers trembled. Failed. The sandwich slid onto the blanket. Marcus froze. She tried again. Nothing. Her hands, those sharp, expressive hands that had waved him off and pointed at windows and clutched his wrist, were too weak to obey her. Something inside Marcus broke open. Without thinking, he unwrapped the sandwich, tore off a small piece, and brought it to her lips. She hesitated. Then she opened her mouth that he fed her slowly. Carefully, bite by bite, his hands steadier than he felt. Tears slipped down his face and splashed onto the blanket. Don't, she whispered. Don't cry over me. I broke my promise, he choked. My dad, if they find out, she swallowed. Listen to me, warrior, she said faintly. Some promises are bigger than rules. When the sandwich was gone, she reached weakly toward her nightstand. Pocket, she said. Marcus leaned closer. She pressed something cold and heavy into his palm. Junk, she muttered. Old thing. Been sitting there forever. He looked down at a War Navy Challenge coin. Scratched. Faded. An anchor etched into the metal. I can't take this, Marcus said quickly. Too late, she whispered. You already did. Her eyes searched his face, suddenly clear, suddenly urgent. You remember me, Marcus, she said. That's all I wanted. To not disappear. I won't forget, he said fiercely. I promise. She smiled small, tired, peaceful. Good boy. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Marcus panicked. I have to go, he whispered. I'll come back tomorrow. I swear. She didn't answer. Her eyes were closed. He stood there for a long moment, heart pounding, then slipped out quietly, the coin clenched in his fist. The next day, room 317 was empty, the bed stripped. The curtains open, sunlight flooding a space that felt suddenly too large that a nurse saw him standing there. Oh, she said softly. You didn't hear? Marcus looked up. She passed early this morning. The words didn't make sense. Passed where? She wasn't alone, the nurse added gently. She asked us to make sure of that. Marcus nodded numbly. He walked back to the supply closet and sat on the floor, staring at the coin in his hand. Junk. That night, he cried quietly into his pillow, so his father wouldn't hear. He kept the coin hidden for years, and he never forgot Mrs. Dorothy Castellano. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the coin wasn't junk at all, and the promise he'd made in that quiet room was about to change his life forever. The morning Mrs. Dorothy Castellano died, the nursing home moved the way it always did, quietly, efficiently, without ceremony. Beds were stripped. Charts were closed. A name was removed from a whiteboard. Room 317 became just another empty room. Marcus didn't come that day. His father told him to stay home. You need rest, he said gently, as if rest could patch a hole that deep. Marcus nodded and did what he was told, though his chest felt hollow, like something essential had been taken with no intention of being returned to the nursing home. The staff spoke in low voices. Some felt a pinch of sadness. Others barely registered at all, until the heels, sharp, confident, echoing, they cut through the afternoon lull like a blade. Heads turned at a woman in a tailored navy suit walked down the hallway, posture straight, expression unreadable. Behind her came two men in dark coats and an administrator scrambling to keep up. "Who is that?" a nurse whispered. Before anyone could answer, another car pulled up outside. Then another, and another. A black sedan stopped at the entrance. A man stepped out, tall, silver-haired, unmistakable. A U.S. senator. The nursing home froze. Phones came out. Whispers multiplied. The administrator nearly tripped over himself, rushing to greet the group. "Senator Whitmore," he stammered. We weren't expecting. "I'm here to see Dorothy Castellano," the senator said calmly. The administrator hesitated. "I'm very sorry, sir. She passed away this morning." The senator closed his eyes. For a moment, the hallway was completely silent. Then he nodded. "I know." The woman in the navy suit stepped forward. "My aunt asked that we come today," she said. "She wanted to be certain everything was finished." "Aunt?" the administrator repeated, confused. The woman handed him a folder. Inside were documents that made his face drain of color. Deeds, trusts, holdings, numbers so large they didn't look real. Dorothy Castellano wasn't poor. She wasn't abandoned. She wasn't forgotten. She was one of the wealthiest women in the state. A woman who owned apartment complexes, farmland, shipping interests. A woman whose donations quietly funded scholarships, clinics, shelters, always anonymously. And for the last 2 years of her life, she had chosen to live in this nursing home, under a different name. In an unremarkable room, refusing special treatment, testing the world. She believed something, the senator said softly, as if speaking to the building itself. "That kindness means nothing if it knows it will be rewarded." The staff stood stunned. All this time, a nurse whispered, "And we thought she was just difficult." "She was," the senator replied gently. "By design." He turned to the administrator. "She wanted to see who would be kind when there was nothing to gain." The administrator swallowed hard. "And did she?" The senator smiled. "Yes." Across town, Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the navy coin resting between his palms. He traced the worn edges with his thumb, over and over, like it might answer the question he was afraid to ask. "Why her? Why me?" A knock sounded at the door. His father looked up, startled. They weren't expecting anyone. When he opened it, 2 men in suits stood outside. Behind them, a black sedan idled quietly. "Mr. Reed?" one of them asked. "Yes," Marcus's father said cautiously. "My name is Thomas Whitmore," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm a United States Senator." Marcus's father stared at him. "I believe," the senator continued, "your son knew Dorothy Castellano." Marcus's heart stopped. They sat together at the kitchen table. The senator spoke carefully, choosing words that would land gently. "Dorothy kept journals," he said. "She wrote about the people she met, the staff, the routines." He looked directly at Marcus. "And she wrote about you." Marcus blinked. "Me?" "She called you her warrior," the senator said, smiling. "Said you reminded her of someone she loved very much." Marcus's fingers tightened around the coin. "She asked that this be given to you," the senator said, nodding toward it. "But you already have it." Marcus swallowed. "She said it was junk." The senator chuckled softly. "She liked to pretend the things that mattered didn't." He grew serious. "There's more," he said. "Dorothy Castellano hadn't just been watching the world. She'd been looking for someone. For years," the senator explained, "Dorothy searched for the family of a woman who once saved her life." Marcus's father leaned forward. "Save her life?" "Decades ago," the senator said, "Dorothy was a young naval nurse stationed overseas. During a medical evacuation, everything went wrong. Equipment failed. Panic spread." He paused. One woman stayed calm, took charge, shielded Dorothy during an explosion, pulled her to safety. Marcus felt a strange pressure building in his chest. "She was an older black woman," the senator continued. "Strong, commanding, brave. Her name was Evelyn Reed." The room went very still. Marcus's father whispered, "That was my mother." Marcus looked at him, stunned. "My grandmother?" he breathed. The senator nodded. "Dorothy never forgot her," he said. "She tried to find her for years. When she finally did, it was too late." Marcus's father lowered his head. "She died before Marcus was born," he said quietly. "Dorothy knew that, and she never stopped feeling she owed her life to Evelyn Reed," the senator said. She believed debts like that don't expire. They pass forward. Marcus stared at the coin in his hand. She chose this nursing home because she knew your father worked there, the senator said gently. She recognized the name. She wanted to see what kind of family Evelyn Reed had raised. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. She saw you, the senator continued. A boy who shared his food when no one was watching, who broke rules for compassion, who fed her with his own hands when she was too weak to feed herself. The senator's voice softened. You passed her test, Marcus. Completely. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a letter written in careful, slanted handwriting. Dear Marcus, I pretended to be invisible because I wanted to see who would see me anyway. You did. Your grandmother once saved my life. You gave me dignity at the end of mine. Debts like that deserve more than gratitude. Attached were documents that a trust, full scholarships, housing security, a fund for Marcus's education, and his father's future. Marcus's father shook his head, overwhelmed. This is too much. The senator smiled. She would disagree. Marcus pressed the coin to his chest. She said she didn't want to disappear, he whispered. The senator nodded. She didn't. Outside, the black sedan waited. Inside the quiet kitchen, a boy who had once learned how to be invisible finally understood something powerful. Kindness doesn't vanish to it echoes. And sometimes the smallest act, a half sandwich, a stolen moment, can unlock a legacy that changes everything. But the biggest surprise of all was still yet to come. The news broke quietly at first that a probate filing sealed with a name that suddenly carried weight far beyond room 317. Dorothy Castellano had left Marcus more than money. Yes, there was a fortune, carefully structured, responsibly managed, designed not to spoil but to support. A trust for education. A home paid in full. Security his father had never imagined for them. But that wasn't the part that made Marcus's hands shake. It was the box. Inside were Dorothy's journals, dozens of them. Pages filled with neat, deliberate handwriting. Observations, questions, regrets. And, woven through the final months, stories of a quiet boy with a brave heart. Beneath the journals lay something wrapped in faded blue cloth. Marcus unfolded it slowly to a navy cross. His grandmother's, lost for decades. Presumed destroyed. Earned the day, she ran in a fire instead of away from it. Dorothy had kept it safe all those years, along with a letter. Some honors don't belong in museums, Dorothy had written. They belong with the people who live by them. Her family didn't agree. Distant relatives, people who hadn't visited, hadn't called, hadn't cared, came forward with lawyers and outrage. They called Marcus a manipulation, a mistake, a child who'd been influenced. They tried to take everything back, but the journals told the truth, page after page, date after date. Clear intent, clear mind, clear love. The courts ruled quickly. They lost that Dorothy's final request, moved forward exactly as she planned. Construction began on a new wing of the nursing home, not bearing her name, not honoring her wealth, but dedicated to something far rarer. The scene wing, a place designed for conversation. Warm light. Open doors, shared tables. No one left to fade quietly into the background. The opening ceremony. Marcus stood beside his father, an supply closet, and hiding. Marcus wore a simple suit. The Navy Cross rested in a display case behind him, not as a trophy, but as a promise. His father spoke briefly, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. My mother taught me that dignity isn't given, he said. It's recognized, and sometimes all it takes is one person willing to see you. Marcus stepped forward next. He didn't talk about money, he talked about a sandwich, about listening, about staying when it would have been easier to leave, about an old woman who didn't want to disappear. When you see someone, Marcus said softly, you change them, and they change you back. Applause filled the room. Not loud, not flashy, but real. Later that evening, Marcus and his father walked home together, and fear of tomorrow, and shadows to hide in. Just a future shaped by a small act of kindness that had grown into something unbreakable. Dorothy Castellano had set out to test the world. In the end, she proved something far more important. kindness doesn't just change lives, that it builds legacies. And once you step into the light, you never have to be invisible again. Marcus never meant to change the world, that he just brought a sandwich. But that small act of kindness rewrote generations of pain, loneliness, and loss. This isn't a story about money, that it's a story about seeing someone when everyone else looks away. Because sometimes the smallest kindness creates the biggest legacy, and you never know whose life you're changing until it's already changed forever.